So this is a really typical question because it is something that most parents worry about. It is definitely something that can happen where a stutter will just what we call spontaneously resolve. So stutters tend to start quickly, but they often disappear quickly as well. However, it's important to know that a developmental stutter is the kind of stutter that is likely to resolve on its own. And so that's typical in our preschool ages kids. Like what I was saying before, when children go from putting one or two words together to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 words together, there's a very rapid increase in complexity. And when that shift happens, we do often see temporary syllable sound or word repetitions. And so that's typically, if you were to walk into any kindergarten or preschool, you would typically see children in that 2 to 4 years age bracket who are doing some kinds of stuttering. What we need to know, though, is that for children that are not going to outgrow a stutter, there are signs. There are things that we look for. So if it's a developmental stutter, it typically is very mild. It's rather infrequent. It tends to only be word repetition, phrase repetition. So that would be things like my car, or where is the ball? So there's repetition there, but it's not so small that it's the sound. So ball would be a sound repetition. Prolongation, where is the ball? Or a block, ball, and then the word comes out with effort and a lot of force behind it. So we typically will only see word repetition or phrase repetition in a developmental stutter, and one that's likely to resolve on its own. For children that are showing other types of stuttering, we're more likely to need to come in and provide some form of support or intervention for them for their stutter to resolve. Other things to look for are, is there a family history of stuttering? So if your child has an uncle, a grandfather, or a close relative like a mother or father who stutters, then there's only a very small chance that that stutter is developmental. More often than not, that's going to be a genetic predisposition to have difficulties with those timing mechanisms in the brain. So if there's family history of stuttering, we almost always will recommend that intervention is carried out sooner rather than later, because we can be pretty sure that that is not a developmental stutter and it's more than likely going to need support. Other things to look for is that type of stutter that you're hearing. So again, if it's more of the sound repetition, sound prolongation, or if it's a block, they fall into the more severe types of stuttering, and again, are not typical in a developmental stutter that's going to resolve on its own without support. And we also want to pay attention to a child's temperament. So children who have high sensitivity, who are neurodivergent in any way, such as ADHD, autism, or who have any other comorbidity. So that's a word we use when things are happening together. So that might be language disorder or delay, speech sound delay or disorder. These are the things that if they're also happening at the same time, then we are more than likely going to need to provide some kind of support for that child's stutter to resolve. And it's unlikely that they will outgrow the stutter, as this question particularly asks. So that's a really big reason why I don't recommend wait and see, because it can be really hard to know which of these kids is going to resolve on their own and which of them is going to need ongoing support. And that first year, that early intervention is really, really crucial when it comes to supporting a child's fluency, building those fluent pathways in the brain. And we want to jump on that as quickly as possible. If your child happens to be one of those lucky ones where they're going to just resolve their stutter spontaneously, that's fantastic. But we've already then provided them at least the environment and as much opportunity as possible for those pathways to be building in the brain. And great if that resolves on its own. But if your child isn't going to be one of those children that spontaneously resolves, and especially if you're seeing any of those indicators, family history, severity of stuttering, any kind of distress in your child, high sensitivity or neurodivergence, then we really want to be doing something ASAP. And that's, a really big reason why I created Fluency Foundations, because it can be really hard to do something straight away. Many therapists will have long waiting lists. And also, because of this unknown factor with stuttering, it's not uncommon for many therapists to recommend a wait and see period where we go, let's just wait and see if this child's stutter will resolve. What we do know, however, is that if a child has been stuttering for more than 9 months, there's only about a 10% chance that that stutter is going to resolve spontaneously. But in that 9 months, what's happening? Are we providing support? Are we giving parents the skills and the knowledge on how to actually create an environment that's highly conducive to fluency, that supports optimized neurology and so many simple techniques that you can be using every day to actually be building those neural pathways? So I'm always on the side of let's do something, and let's be really conscious about the decisions we're making for these children in these very critical early years of their development, because it can have such a long-lasting impact on what's going to happen for them later. So I think, if you're already in here in the membership and you're worried, is my child going to outgrow the stutter? Then I think you're in the perfect position, because you already have this information available to you to be able to use and to be able to be implementing it on a regular basis. And then if the stutter does resolve on its own, fantastic. But if it doesn't, if it's one of those stutters that isn't going to resolve on its own, you've done everything in your power to support that to be the best possible outcome for your child. So I commend you for being in here, even with that doubt.